4 spine-chilling, true night shift tales. Discover the sinister, haunted secrets that were exposed. Sarah's heart raced as she gripped the wheel, the engine's rumble filling the eerie silence of Maplewood. She'd just finished another grueling night at the factory, the shadows of her small Midwestern town creeping closer with every passing second. The flickering streetlights cast ghostly shapes, twisting the old houses into haunting silhouettes that seemed to watch her every move. This quiet place, once alive with laughter, now felt heavy, weighed down by secrets buried deep underneath its faded streets. As she drove home, an icy rush washed over her when her headlights illuminated disturbing, childlike chalk drawings sprawled across her neighbors' driveways. They were terrifying symbols, twisted figures that resembled the whispered legends she'd heard. The Watcher, an ominous spectre who preyed on the vulnerable under the veil of midnight. She tried to laugh it off, dismissing the myths like bedtime stories to scare kids away from staying out too late. But tonight, unease slithered through her veins. The phone buzzed against her thigh as she drove, a silence in the air that made her jump. She glanced down to see another silenced call, the third one in a row. Who was doing this? Panic bubbled in her chest, squeezing her throat tight. Were they trying to warn her? She dismissed it, focused on the road ahead, but her mind spun with dread. The woods behind the factory loomed like dark sentinels, and the rustle of leaves sometimes sounded like whispers. Her exhaustion gnawed at her, but she couldn't afford to slow down. She had to build a normal life for Tommy, yet recent news rattled her. To hear from her co-workers about a woman who vanished without a trace filled the air with an undeniable tension. Rumors circulated like wildfire, feeding an ever-growing paranoia among her friends and neighbors. They glanced at each other sideways now, neighbors becoming strangers as uncertainty spread. Determined, Sarah sought out Mr. Jenkins, the elderly neighbor who had seen it all. Sitting on his creaking porch, he stared into the distance with weary eyes. "Maplewood isn't what it used to be, dear," he whispered, his voice thick with echoes of the past. The kind of past that's better left undisturbed. Every word sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, the air thickened, and her gut twisted when she realized she might be caught in something far more sinister than she had envisioned. Those symbols were leading her somewhere, each tugging at a thread of her understanding, pulling her closer to an unsettling truth. Just then, the ambient noise of the neighborhood became one big, deafening silence. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She felt the weight in the air shift, and a loud crash rattled her back porch, echoing against the walls of her small house. Her heart pounded wildly. Safety felt like a distant memory. With trembling hands, she took a cautious step toward the sound. In the dim light, she barely caught a shadow darting just beyond view, whispering her name in a voice that sent chills racing down her spine. Sarah stood frozen at the door, realizing that the true horror lay not just in the Watcher, but in the idea that the greatest threat might be lurking closer than she dared to think. She hesitated, pulse racing, as she turned the knob. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but she had to know what could be waiting for her in the darkness. Her breath caught as the door creaked open, the chilling draft sweeping through her, sending a shiver down her spine. The night air was thick and suffocating, carrying strange sounds that crawled into her ears, whispers of a language she thought long forgotten. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling as it disappeared into the darkness. No answer, just the deep, unsettling silence that answered back like an echo from another world. A flicker of movement to her left made her heart jump, and she turned sharply, ready to confront whatever horror lurked out there. But the yard lay empty, shadows clinging to the edges like thick fog. Sarah stepped out cautiously, every sound amplified. The crunch of gravel beneath her feet felt deafening. Her eyes darted toward the tree line. The woods loomed ominously, branches clawing at the darkened sky as if they were reaching for her. The symbols drawn in chalk haunted her mind, images of faces twisted in terror. What did they mean? "Get it together, Sarah," she whispered to herself, but the fear wrapped tighter around her chest, making every breath a struggle. She turned back toward the house when she thought she heard it again, a faint whisper, soft and insistent, beckoning her from the shadows. "Tommy," she said loudly, trying to ground herself, "is that you?" When no response came, she felt a hollow pit open inside her. What if it wasn't Tommy? What if something had taken him? Gripping her phone, she hesitated again. Should she call for help? Or would that only drag more unwanted attention to this nightmare? As her mind raced, she took another step toward the yard, peering deeper into the dark. Suddenly the air shifted again. The moment felt heavy, charged, and then she saw it, a figure standing barely visible against the backdrop of trees. It was tall, unnaturally still. Sarah's heart drummed in her ears, a frantic beat betraying her mounting terror. Who was it? Was it the Watcher? "Who are you?" she managed to whisper. The figure shifted slightly, and that's when she saw its face, or rather, what she feared it to be. Eyes like cavernous blackness stared back at her, devoid of warmth or humanity. It smiled, or at least she thought it might. The motion was slow, deliberate, the kind that sends icy tendrils of pure fear down your spine. "Sarah," it called softly, her name hanging in the frigid air like a death knell. "Come closer." "No!" Her voice finally broke free, harsh and panicked. She stumbled back, her instincts screaming at her to run. As she turned, the sound of whispers intensified, echoing around her. "It's not safe!" screamed a voice that resembled Mr. Jenkins's, but there was no time to think. She dashed for the front door, heart pounding, panic tightening its grip. She slammed the door shut behind her, body heaving as she leaned against it, feeling the impact reverberate through the wood. However, relief was short-lived. The whispers now filled her home, curling through the very walls, seeping into her bones. Shadows flickered, darkening corners she never knew could feel so alive. Each whisper seemed to taunt her. "You're not safe here. You've awakened something." In that moment, she knew, the Watcher wasn't just a legend. It was real, and it had its eyes set on her. It wanted in. And the worst part, whoever was standing out there was only the beginning. They wanted her to play a part in their game, and she had no idea what the rules were. As her mind raced with thoughts of escaping, she saw it. A message scrawled across the floor in something dark, a warning or a calling. Her breath caught. It simply read, "Join us." Her hands shook, and she stifled a cry as the whispers grew louder, the shadowy figure reappearing in the glass of her front door. But what she didn't know was that someone was already inside, waiting for her next move. Her eyes darted frantically around the room, every flicker of shadow now a potential threat. "Someone's in here," she whispered to herself, feeling her voice tremble. The whispers intensified, a chorus of voices swirling through the air, weaving a tapestry of dread that wrapped around her throat. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice slicing through the cacophony. Silence. The world outside her home felt alive, breathing with a malignant pulse that seemed to sync with her rapid heartbeats. She pressed her back against the door, breaths coming shallow and fast. She didn't dare take her eyes off the front door. The shadows danced at the edges of her vision, shivering with malcontent. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like ominous footsteps, felt in her bones. A chill swept through the room, a gust of wind, or something more sinister, Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of something dragging. It was slow, deliberate, scratching against the wooden floor. A shudder rolled over her, and she clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. Who was with her? What was happening? "Tommy!" she cried out, desperation bubbling to the surface. "If you're here, say something!" Silence followed, that heavy, smothering silence, and then from the dark hallway she spotted it, a shape beginning to take form. It was shadowy, flickering at first, but then it coalesced into something sinister, a figure resembling a person, but with eyes like voids, deep and endless. It stood still, as though savoring her fear, its mouth stretched into a grotesque smile that felt more like a mockery than reassurance. "Sarah, join us," it whispered, and the room seemed to tremble with the weight of its words. "Stay back," she screamed, stepping back from the door. Panic spiked as she considered her options. The windows, the back door. She couldn't stay here. She had to escape. She glanced to her left, noticing the stairs that wound upwards. A plan formed. If she could get to the attic, maybe she could find something to help her. Maybe Tommy would be up there. She darted toward the stairs, heart racing, ignoring the whispers that swirled about, urging her to stop, to surrender. Her hands gripped the banister as she climbed fast, the wood creaking under her weight like a warning. Once at the top, she fumbled with the door to the attic, shoving it open with a crash. Dust motes swirled in the dim light, catching her breath. The air was stale, thick with layers of neglect. Inside the attic, it felt like stepping into a forgotten world. Shadows wrapped around the beams of wood, like dark tendrils. Old boxes loomed like silent sentinels, their secrets locked away. A faded lamp glimmered weakly, barely illuminating the corners of the room. "Tommy?" she called, her voice trembling in the suffocating darkness. She felt a flicker of false hope. One by one, she flung open boxes, searching for anything that resembled a sign of life. Pictures, toys, remnants of a life left behind, but no Tommy. Just echoes of the past. A wave of despair washed over her. Then she heard it again, the dragging sound, creeping up the stairs towards her. "No!" she yelled, scrambling into the furthest corner, her back pressing hard against the cold wall. She could see the door to the attic begin to creak open, a crack of darkness widening, spilling into the room. "You can't hide! Join us!" Fear coursed through her veins like ice. In that moment she realized the whispers weren't just noise, they were an invitation, a call to join something dark and awful. Her breath quickened as the figure loomed larger in the doorway, blotting out what little light trickled into the attic. All she could do was hold her breath and wait. But for what? Who would emerge from the darkness, and would she be ready for what came next? The door groaned as the figure glided fully into the attic, its presence swallowing the weakened lamp's light. Sarah's heart raced. It was like staring down a tunnel of darkness, with eyes that promised oblivion. The whispers surrounded her now, swelling and expanding, a monstrous symphony of souls lost, begging for release. "Join us," the figure urged again, and with every syllable a chill wrapped around her throat, squeezing tighter. She felt a visceral pull, a terrible yearning to succumb to that darkness, to let go of her panic. "You're one of us, Sarah." "No!" she cried out, desperation lacing her voice. She clawed at the wall, every instinct telling her to flee, but escape felt further away than ever. She stumbled backward, tripping over dusty boxes, her mind racing with a single thought. She had to fight back. In that moment of chaos, something caught her eye, a glimmer of metal peeking from beneath an old blanket. She lunged toward it, hands trembling as she pulled away the fabric. A rusty old axe, dull and forgotten, lay waiting. Not the weapon she envisioned, but it was all she had. "Stop! Stay back!" she shouted, gripping the axe tightly, its cold weight grounding her amidst the terror. She could feel the whispers shift, a ripple of confusion passing through their chorus. The figure inched closer, its faceless grin widening, a distortion of the last shred of humanity. "You can't fight what you are." Sarah swung the axe wildly, the arc cutting through the air, admiring how instinct guided her movements. The blade barely missed the apparition, causing it to flinch. She heard it hiss, a sound like boiling water, and for a fleeting moment she could see the darkness coiled around it, pulsating and writhing. "Leave me alone!" she screamed and charged forward, pushing against the wave of horror. She didn't think, she just acted. With every ounce of strength, she swung again. But as the axe connected with the figure, there was no solid impact, only a cold rush as the spectre flickered, remnants of its essence dissipating into shadows. "What have you done?" the whispers screamed in unison, rising to a fever pitch, echoing off the attic walls. Panic set in. The room felt alive now, the shadows swirling faster, morphing into shapes of despair. The attic's once familiar corners became treacherous, alive with malevolence. With the axe still clenched in her hand, she turned toward the stairwell. She had to get out. She had to escape this nightmare, but as she approached the door, she realized it was no longer as it was. The threshold pulsed ominously now, flesh-like, almost breathing. "Tommy," she whispered, turning back to the darkness, desperate for assurance. But all she saw were the voids, the eyes multiplying around her, promising despair, demanding she join the haunting choir. Then a new voice broke through, a laugh chilling and familiar, echoing just beyond her grasp. "Join us, Sarah. Tommy is waiting." The world spun. She needed to decide, join the darkness or fight her way back. One choice could lead to liberation, the other, theft of her very soul. With a deep breath, she took a step forward, feeling the thrumming pulse of what surrounded her. Was the attic her prison or her battleground? Before she could answer, the door to the attic slammed shut with a thunderous crash, plunging her into profound darkness. "Join us," they whispered relentlessly. In the pitch black, she heard her own voice, shaky but firm. "I won't." And then silence enveloped her like a blanket, leaving her alone with her thoughts. But was she really alone? And from the gloom, a low hum rose, familiar yet terrifying, pulling her deeper into uncertainty. What awaited her on the other side of the darkness? Would she discover a way out or succumb to the voices beckoning her to total surrender? The silence was deafening. Sarah's breaths came in ragged gasps, each exhale curling in the cold air like tendrils of fear. The darkness pressed against her, alive and sentient, suffocating. She fought the desire to scream, the certainty that any sound would invite the shadows even closer. As she stood frozen, clenching the cold axe with both hands, the whispers intensified, a sinister chant wrapping around her like chains. "Join us! Join us!" They pulsated in her mind, scratching at her sanity. She felt the axe slip slightly from her grip and resisted the temptation to lower it. Instead, she strained to listen, straining against the eerie stillness. Was there something more? A sound, a movement, or was it just the trick of her terrified mind? Then she felt it, a shift in the air, a presence lurking, watching. The low hum returned, vibrating through her bones. It swirled around her like dark smoke, weaving in and out of her awareness. It spoke to her, not in words but in emotions, in memories. Images flashed through her mind, piercing through the thick veil of terror. Tommy's laughter echoed softly, a painful reminder of the boy she had lost, the hope she had clung to. She saw him playing in the yard, the sunlight dancing on his hair, innocent and free. The warmth of that memory collided with the cold horror around her. "Tommy," she whispered again, her voice trembling, but she could not let go of the axe. "Tommy is gone," came the taunting voice of the figure. It echoed through the shadows, a cruel mockery. "He is with us now, Sarah. Forever." "No!" she cried, eyes blurring with unshed tears. The memories threatened to consume her, feeding the shadows and bringing them to life. She couldn't allow it. She wouldn't let them win. She couldn't fall into despair. Not now. As if sensing her resolve, the air thickened. The walls of the attic began to pulsate violently, expanding and contracting like living flesh. The whispers grew frantic, rising to a fever pitch. "Join us!" they screeched, demanding her surrender. Sarah's heart raced. She swung the axe wildly in front of her, fueled by desperation and rage. "Get away from me!" She felt the frigid air whip around her as the axe sliced through the darkness, but once again it met nothing but chilling void. The room shrieked as if it were alive, the floorboards creaking under her weight. She felt the shadows close in, the presence becoming overwhelmingly oppressive. "You can't fight it," the voice whispered, slithering into her ear. "You're already lost." But she wasn't lost. Not yet. With every ounce of defiance, she hurled the axe towards the door, its blade burying into the pulsating wood. With a surge of panic, she lunged forward, pushing against the fleshy barrier. The door hadn't completely sealed shut. It was still breathing. But as she pressed her weight against it, the door molded to her form, trapping her. She felt cold fingers wrap around her wrists, dragging her back. Fear surged through her, and in her struggle, something inside her snapped. "No! I won't!" Her scream echoed disjointedly, cut short as the darkness encroached like a tidal wave. She lashed out, kicking the door, shoving against the unnatural force. Suddenly the lower part of the door got wider, and a crack of pale light pushed through. But it flickered wildly, and a shadow emerged. A figure, indistinct yet hauntingly familiar, stood behind it. "Sarah," it said softly, a voice she knew too well. Could it be? A new dread coiled in her stomach. She had to decide. Was this a chance for salvation or another trap, another tendril pulling her into the abyss? Her heart raced as she hesitated. What lay beyond the light? Hope or another nightmare? Then it started moving closer, hand outstretched. Would she brave the light and confront whatever awaited her on the other side? Or trust in the whispers that promised a kind of solace? As she stood caught in the grip of uncertainty, the shadows writhed in anticipation. "Choose, Sarah," they hissed, a chant not of salvation, but of finality. What would she let slip through her fingers? The figure in the doorway drew closer, its face still obscured by shadows, yet its presence felt unmistakably familiar. Sarah's heart pounded relentlessly against her rib cage, a war drum signaling an impending battle. Was it really Tommy? Or was this another illusion crafted by the malevolent force trapping her in despair? "Sarah." The voice again, sweet yet laced with something dark, a hint of malice or perhaps sorrow. "Come to me." She wanted to leap forward, to embrace the light, to cling to the hope that Tommy had somehow returned to her. But a cold dread gripped her, dragging her down into the depths of uncertainty. The shadows swirled around her feet, whispering in a cacophony of voices, drowning out her thoughts. "He isn't real. You can't trust him," they clamored. The air was electric, vibrating with anguish. In that moment of hesitation, every ounce of energy seemed to drain from her limbs. Was the light truly an escape, or just bait to lead her deeper into the nightmare? "What are you waiting for?" the figure implored, its voice turning sharper. "I'm here, Sarah. I need you." "I need you," echoed the shadows mockingly, a chorus of hissing laughter weaving through the cracks of reality. Fear clawed at her throat. What if she stepped into that light just to find herself lost forever? What if the figure in the doorway was merely using her memories against her, a cruel trick designed to break her spirit? "Fight back, Sarah," the shadows hissed, now fusing into one booming voice. The walls pulsed in agreement, a sinister heartbeat echoing through the attic. "You know what you must do." Just as she felt her will crumbling, it happened. A sudden burst of clarity. Tommy's laughter replayed in her mind, synchronicity with her heart's wild tempo. The joy of his innocence had been snatched away. Anger ignited within her, burning through the suffocating grip of despair. "Enough!" she screamed. "I don't need you. I refuse to listen." She charged forward, fueled by rage and desperation, her body crashing into the door. But as she reached out, hoping to grasp the figure's hand, it swayed back, leaving her with nothing but empty air and the sickening realization of betrayal. It was as if the light itself had dimmed, casting her deeper into obscurity. "No!" she yelled, spinning around. Shadows writhed and choked at her ankles, trying to pull her into their embrace of despair. Belatedly, the axe, her only weapon, caught her eye, still embedded in the door. With a surge of courage, she lunged toward it, wrenching it free, just as the full force of the dark presence bore down on her. Gripping the axe tightly, she turned to face the shadowy mass surrounding her. "You don't own me!" she bellowed, defiance surging through her like adrenaline. "I'm not joining you!" The shadows hissed in fury, a tidal wave of rage. They recoiled as she raised the axe high. In a frenzied swing, she struck through the darkness, the blade connecting with something solid with a resounding thud. A visceral scream erupted, shaking the very walls of the attic. But the victory was fleeting. A shift echoed around her, and the remnants of the shadows transformed into a thick fog, swirling around her in violent circles. Panic surged as she realized this was only the beginning. They were regrouping, morphing, planning their next attack. "Sarah!" The voice came again, more insistent now, urging her to lower her guard. "Join us, and we'll bring him back. We can make it right." She felt the flicker of hope struggle against the tides of despair, grappling for control. But in the shifting miasma, she also felt dread. What would happen if she gave in? As the oppressive fog swirled closer, tightening its grip around her throat, Sarah knew she was at a crossroad. Would she fight against the darkness, or risk everything for a glimmer of hope? The shadows seemed to draw in closer, closing around her like a noose. "Choose once more, Sarah," they whispered, their collective breath hot against her skin. Time slowed, and in the suffocating silence she felt the weight of her choice. But what if she made the wrong one? What if the light wasn't freedom, but a deeper descent into madness? In that moment of sheer terror, she realized the true horror lay in the choices she was being forced to make. The fog thickened, curling around her like a serpent, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Every whisper in her ear felt like ice, each one sharper than a knife, tugging at her sanity with relentless insistence. Sarah could feel her heartbeat in her throat, a frantic rhythm underscoring the impending doom. "Join us!" they coaxed, the voices harmonizing in a twisted symphony. "Your Tommy is waiting. Don't you want him back?" Images of Tommy flooded her mind. His laughter, the warmth of his smile, their quiet moments of joy. But those memories were now marred with the heavy stain of loss. "No!" she screamed, swinging the axe wildly, and was answered by a chorus of agonized wails that echoed through the attic. Yet the dark mist pressed closer, thickening to an almost palpable form. She swung the axe again, but connected only with the cold void. The shadows retaliated, swirling around her in a swirl of chaos, pulling at her clothes, at her skin, as if trying to drag her into their all-consuming abyss. "Resist, Sarah," she yelled at herself. "You won't let them take you." Her hands trembled, the weight of the axe feeling heavier as fatigue clawed at her determination. The laughter, Tommy's laughter, suddenly surged through the chaotic noise, a beacon in the storm. It was disarming yet intoxicating, the warmth of nostalgia battling with the chill of despair. "Sarah," it beckoned, soft and gentle, wiping away her resolve. The shadows hissed, their voices rising in a frenzied crescendo. "He's a lie, an illusion. Let go." "Stop!" she shouted, clenching her fists tighter around the axe. With renewed fervor, she thrust the blade into the ground, anchoring herself against the creeping shadows. "I'm not afraid of you." The wailing escalated, forming a tide of despair that crashed against her, demanding surrender. Fear wrapped its tendrils around her heart, but Sarah fought against it. "I choose to remember," she declared, her voice cutting through the darkness like a knife. "I remember what he meant to me, not this twisted version you offer." Surging with a sudden surge of defiance, she swung the axe once again, this time aiming not to destroy, but to carve a path through the darkness. The fog dissipated momentarily, revealing fleeting glimpses of light interspersed in the shadow, tantalizing and elusive. But the moment was ephemeral. The darkness roared back, angered by her resistance. The shadows twisted and surged, thrumming with malevolence, and in that chaos she felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. Panic gripped her throat as the walls of the attic began to close in, her refuge becoming a prison. "Sarah!" The voice changed, now something deeper and rawer, echoing through the wood beams, an anthem of misery. "You can't escape, you know that, don't you? I can give him back, but you must let them in, completely." A vision crashed into her mind. Tommy, beneath layers of swirling fog, reaching out with pleading eyes. Her chest tightened, the walls closing in, her grip on the axe faltering. "Choose, Sarah." It pressed again, squeezing her fragile heart. "Do you want him back?" The shadows rebounded, taking form, manifesting a dark reflection of everything she feared. Her grasp on reality wavered, and she glanced wildly around the attic, her sanctuary now a cell. Desperation clawed at her, and the temptation of the darkness grew more potent, seducing her mind with the prospect of a reunion. But then a faint spark flickered within her, not of longing but of clarity. She suddenly realized that giving in meant losing herself entirely, losing the very essence of what made their memories true. "Never!" she shouted, standing straighter, the axe raised once more. The fog writhed, shrieking in indignation as she bolted toward the source of the laughter. There was no turning back. The next decision could bind or free her. But beyond that last barrier, could she reclaim what was rightfully hers, or would she plunge deeper into the chasm of shadows? The answer danced just out of reach, dimming as the fog advanced with a fury and despair she had never seen. Was there still a way out before darkness claimed her soul forever? The moment she lunged forward, the fog around her erupted into a frenzy. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, striking her arms, her neck, even her face. Each contact burned like ice, freezing her blood, making her vision flash dangerously between light and dark. The laughter twisted, echoing through the hulking void as it grew louder, mocking her attempts to fight back. All around her, shadows morphed into figures, hollow, distorted, spectral silhouettes, weaving through the fluctuating mist like phantoms in a nightmare. "Sarah!" it called again, that sweet voice, now tainted and rich with sadness. "I've been waiting." She stumbled, but caught herself, the axe firm in her grip, a desperate weapon against the impending abyss. "I won't let you take me," she shouted, her voice trembling yet defiant as she swung the axe with fierce determination. The blade sliced through the ghastly fog, creating brief pockets of clarity, revealing flickering glimpses of Tommy's smile and the warmth of their life together. But every slash seemed to summon more shadows, clawing at her sanity, dragging her down with an insatiable hunger. "You cannot escape," they hissed, their voices serrated and ravenous. The characters they formed began to whisper secrets, sowing doubt and fear. "Did you even love him, Sarah?" One figure slithered closer, its voice dripping with malice. "Or was he just a stepping stone to fill your empty heart?" "Stop it!" she shouted, swinging wildly again. Desperation clawed at her chest, each pause in her movement leaving her vulnerable to the whispers that snaked into her mind, each one sticky and foul. "You're not real!" she screamed, as if voicing her disbelief could somehow banish them. The moment hung heavy. Just then a memory flashed stark against the encroaching blackness. Tommy's hug after a long day, a simple moment that had brought her such joy. She could almost feel his warmth again, radiating through the fog, but the shadows recoiled, screeching at the intrusion. "You're trapped in the past," they shrieked. "Embrace the void." Panic surged anew, her mind racing. "You're lying," Sarah yelled. She struggled against their words, each one like a stone thrown into her heart. Anger ignited within her, a fire against the coldness. "You don't know me!" Her swings became harder, faster, fueled by a reckless rage. The axe met air and shadow, sending tendrils of darkness spiraling away, the sound echoing like thunder in her ears. The fortitude built up, but she still felt the crawling dread against her skin, the slick weight of despair pushing her towards submission. "Do you want him back?" the voice pestered once more. "It's so simple. Let go." But as she fought, she felt the presence shift, the grip on her reality growing tenuous. With every blow, cracks began to form in the oppressive weight of the attic. Light broke through, faint but insistent. She could see an opening, a gap between the shadows that beckoned her to escape. "Run!" the flicker of thought urged, but doubt clawed back. What if escaping meant leaving Tommy behind forever? "Choose, Sarah," whispered the voices, a monstrous choir vibrating through the wood beams. Clarity cut through her confusion. She remembered the truth. She had the power to choose her memories, to keep them above all else, safe from any darkness. Her grip tightened around the axe, and she squealed, "I choose love." Suddenly, as if in response, the floor beneath her splintered, pitch-black roots bursting through. The fog roared and surged toward her, darker than night, but she felt the pulse of light behind her. In a split second, she made her move, darting toward the opening even as shadows clawed at her. Would it be enough? Could she outrun the darkness that wanted to swallow her whole? The answer loomed ahead, an unholy sanctuary of light. But as Sarah leaped, fingers grasping for salvation, she felt an icy grip latch onto her ankle. "Stay!" it hissed, pulling her backward, that dark whisper enveloping her once more, and she realized the true fight had yet to begin. The coldness wrapped around her like a vice, dragging her back into the depths of despair. Sarah fought against it, her heart racing, pulse drumming in her ears like the frantic tattoo of a trapped bird. "No!" she gasped, feeling the darkness seep through her skin, as if it was trying to claw its way into her very soul. Panic surged, blinding her for a moment. Her eyes darted to the sanctuary ahead. What if the light was just a trick? What if there was nothing on the other side but more shadows? Yet, deep inside, she felt the glimmer of hope still flickering against the tide of fear. It was a fight against fate, but she couldn't let go. "I won't be yours!" she screamed, swinging the axe back blindly, hoping to sever the icy tendril gripping her tightly. The blade struck hard, meeting a softness that turned to dust, but the grip tightened around her foot. More shadows crawled up her legs, seeking to hold her down. "You're ours," they taunted, their voices a vile chorus. "You chose to stay." "Sarah!" A warm echo, a whisper of Tommy, cut through the darkness like a knife. The memory of his eyes, bright and filled with love, glimmered in her mind, a beacon pushing against the gnawing fear. "Fight!" his voice urged, wrapping around her like an embrace. Her breath quickened. With renewed strength, Sarah twisted and pulled with all her might. The shadows writhed and shrieked, the bindings around her loosening just enough for her to get free. She stumbled forward into light, falling through the gap as the shadows screamed in outrage, snapping at her retreating form. When she landed hard on the dusty attic floor, the world spun. With a gasp, she scrambled to her feet, blinking against the brightness. The shadows writhed at the edges, their dark fingers clawing for her. But they couldn't reach her. Not now. She was alone, but not free. The attic felt different. It was more than just an empty space filled with cobwebs and the memory of a past life. Her breath caught as the realization dawned. She was back, yet time had stopped. The light stung her eyes, casting eerie shadows, creating distorted shapes that danced on the walls. "What now?" she whispered to herself. Just then, she caught a flicker of something lurking at the periphery of the illumination. A shape formed, half in shadows, half in light. It loomed there, breathing heavily, watching her with eyes that pierced through her soul. "Did you think it was over?" a familiar voice murmured, sending icy tendrils of fear racing down her spine. She turned, and there was Tommy, or what looked like him. His face was twisted, eyes filled with darkness. He reached out a hand, fingers shaking. "You chose to fight for love. But can love truly protect you?" Sarah stepped back, panic rising again as she shook her head. "No, it's you, isn't it? You're not real." The spectre smiled, a grotesque parody of the joy she remembered. "I'm as real as your guilt, Sarah, as real as your fear. You can never escape me." Her heart raced. This was her nightmare coming to life. "Leave me alone," she shouted, raising the axe again. But the shadows coiled tighter, the weight of despair thick as fog. "Come back to me," he implored, his voice smooth and tempting. Panic gripped her once more, and without thinking she swung the axe, aiming at the illusion standing before her. The blade connected, but instead of the expected resistance, Tommy exploded into a cloud of dark smoke, swirling around her like a furious storm, whispering all her regrets and fears. "Stop!" she yelled, trying to shield herself from the suffocating thoughts, the haunting memories clawing at her mind. Reality bent around her, the attic spinning dangerously. But through that chaos, that tiny flicker of love, her love for Tommy, hung on in her mind. "Fight back," she told herself, and just when she felt her feet leave the ground, she understood. She had to confront the shadows, because if she didn't face them, they wouldn't let her go. As the whirlwind closed in, she shouted her declaration into the abyss. "I won't let you consume me!" And in that moment of defiant clarity, the shadows paused. A fleeting silence fell, an uneasy calm settling like a heavy fog just before the storm. But what Sarah didn't know was the price of her declaration. Something darker awaited her, far beyond the cracks of her fragile reality. What would she lose in this fight for salvation? Would she unearth secrets that were best left buried? The fog answered with a soft hiss, and the shadows began to coalesce, forming something much more sinister. The shadows twisted in on themselves, weaving a tapestry of despair that pressed harder against Sarah's senses. The air was thick with anxiety. Every breath felt like an echo reverberating through the dark void. She braced herself, muscles tense with anticipation, as the darkness began to form into something substantial once more. A grotesque figure that mirrored the horrors she had just faced. "Sarah," it called again, but this time it was a guttural sound, a mockery of life. "You think you can escape? You think love will save you?" "No!" she screamed, gripping the axe with white knuckles. She could feel the cold tendrils snaking around her ankles, trying to pull her back into the depths. The memory of Tommy's warmth flashed in her mind, a blazing beacon against the encroaching dusk. It brought her back, grounding her heart and igniting her fury. She lunged forward, axes swinging wildly, striking at the apparition's core. Shadows shrieked and hissed, echoing her movements. Each attack sent tremors through the form, sending ripples of darkness quaking in every direction. "You're not real!" she yelled, the conviction in her voice fueling her desperate fight. The entity evaporated momentarily, only to regroup once again, thicker, angrier. "You're fighting against yourself, Sarah. You're the one holding on to the past. You're the one who calls me forth." The words struck her heart like arrows, and for a moment doubt flickered in her resolve. Could it be true? Was she to blame for these nightmares? "Tommy is not gone," she called into the shadows' swirling chaos, "and I won't let you take him from me again." Drawing strength from her love for her son, she swung the axe again, aiming for the heart of the malevolent creature. The blade connected nearest to where she thought its heart would be, and with that connection, the shadows erupted into a wave of agonized wails. The light flickered overhead, illuminating the corners of the attic with warm, radiant beams, illuminating memories she'd nearly let slip away. Images of the two of them flooded her mind. Family dinners, birthday celebrations, and endless laughter. Those moments formed an impenetrable barrier, shielding her heart and renewing her resolve. "Enough!" she shouted, voice booming in the stillness, filled with conviction that shattered the atmosphere around her. "I choose to remember the love. I choose to fight for what was real." With that declaration, she swung the axe again with all her might. She felt the weight of its purpose, the energy coursing through her limbs, as if being channeled from every joyful memory of Tommy that raced through her mind. The entity shrieked, the sound a cacophony of rage and anguish, melding into a terrifying roar. Sarah pressed forward into its center, her fear giving way to an empowering rage. The axe connected with a solid thud, sending shockwaves coursing through the shadow. Blinding light exploded from the point of impact, scattering the darkness and illuminating the whole room in a brilliant glare. As the light consumed the shadows, Sarah felt a final desperate grip around her ankle stiffen and finally vanish. She felt weightless, as if the very essence of the vile presence was drawn away like smoke in the wind. The attic around her transformed, and she found herself kneeling on the now familiar hardwood floor, breathless but alive. The shadows dissipated, retreating into memory, leaving her in a tranquil silence. It felt as if the air had been cleared, allowing her the room to breathe, to finally reclaim her space. The clutter was gone, replaced with the warmth of safety, echoes of laughter lingering like faint whispers. "Tommy?" she called out, a heartbeat of hope flaring in her chest. "Mom!" came his sweet voice, lighter than a feather, yet it trembled within her like a delicate gust of wind. The tone, that familiar melody, filled the air like a song she'd longed to hear. She turned just in time to see a small figure shimmer into view, glowing with innocence and warmth. There was Tommy, eyes bright and filled with love, standing tall, untouched by darkness. "Mom, you did it!" he beamed, running into her open arms. The weight of everything she'd lost began to pour back into her heart, the joy of being together, the spark of life lingering in their embrace. Suddenly, an overwhelming wave of emotion crashed over her, and she squeezed him tighter. "I thought I lost you," she breathed, a mix of relief and pain lacing her words. "The darkness is gone now," he whispered against her shoulder, the reassurance washing over her like a warm shower after the cold. As their hearts beat together, Sarah realized that love could indeed conquer darkness. It wasn't just the triumph over shadows. It was an acceptance of her journey, a promise never to allow despair to bind her again. Hand in hand, they moved toward the open space of light, stepping back beyond the anxiety that loomed like an exile. As they crossed the threshold, the attic dimmed, but never felt oppressive. The haunting whispers now transformed into a gentle melody of memories, a reminder of what they had overcome, the battles they had fought, and the strength found in each other. In that moment, she felt a weight lift. Everything she cherished, the laughter, the warmth, would forever be encased in the joys of their memories. With Tommy securely by her side, she knew they would face whatever came next, every shadow safely tucked behind them. As they stepped into the world beyond the doorway, sunlight filtering gently through the windows, Tommy looked up at her and smiled. "Can we go home now?" "Of course," she replied, feeling free, ready to embrace life without hesitation. Her heart brimmed with warmth and certainty. "Let's go home." And as they walked away, it was clear. Darkness could creep in, but love always shone through. They would face the world together, sunlight casting their shadows behind them, stronger than the fears that once held them captive. The end. Now make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.